Before diving into this incredible story, consider subscribing to the channel and hitting the bell. Every story here has something to say, and you won't want to miss a single one. She discovers a German Shepherd K9 tied to a tree. What she does shocks the whole town. One winter morning, in the small town of Bluefield, Kansas, the landscape seemed frozen in an icy painting. The wind blew gently, lifting swirls of powdery snow onto the deserted sidewalks. The wooden houses with frost-covered roofs smoked from their chimneys, and only a few footprints disturbed the pristine whiteness of the forest path that bordered the town. The cold was biting, pricking like needles on bare skin. Frost had coated the bare branches of the trees, transforming them into crystalline sculptures. Each step made the frozen snow crunch beneath boots, and the air had that metallic smell unique to intense winter mornings. Silence reigned, absolute, as if nature itself were holding its breath. Samantha Hayes, 39, walked slowly but surely. She wore a thick olive-colored parka, a relic of her former military life, and a wool hat pulled low over her forehead. Her gloves, worn but warm, clutched the empty leash she always kept rolled up in her pocket. A reflex. Even after all these years. Since returning to Bluefield after 8 years as a military vet, first in Iraq, then in Afghanistan, Samantha sought peace in the simple things. The forest, especially in winter, reminded her of the silences of the desert after storms. No screams. No emergencies. No bodies to stitch up under fire. This walk had become her ritual. She left early, long before the townspeople emerged, even before the sun had fully risen. She walked to clear her mind. To forget the lost faces. The comrades who had never returned. And above all, the military dog she hadn't been able to save, a Belgian shepherd named Rocket, who had died in her arms on the tarmac of a ruined base. But that morning, something broke that bubble of silence. A noise. Stealthy. Almost unreal. A moan. She stopped dead in her tracks. Her instincts, honed by years of service, made her listen immediately. Again. A short gasp, mingled with a muffled squeak. It wasn't the wind, nor a wild animal. It was familiar distress. Samantha left the trail without thinking. Her boots sank into the deep snow as she picked her way through the trees, branches occasionally whipping her face. The groaning grew clearer. She accelerated, stepped over a stump, almost slipped on a patch of ice. And suddenly, she saw him. An German Shepherd. Tied to a tree by a rusty chain as thick as a wrist. The dog was skeletal, its fur a mess, covered in ice and dirt. Its paws, split in several places, were red with frozen blood. It was trembling violently, but not just from the cold, from fear, from exhaustion. Yet its eyes. His eyes pierced her. They were tired, drained, but imbued with a strange calm. A fierce dignity that never faded, even in abandonment. Samantha felt her heart tighten. Her throat tightened, as it did every time she met a gaze she had seen before, that of wounded soldiers, traumatized dogs, or people who no longer expected anything from life. She knelt slowly, her hands open to view, without any sudden movements. "Hey, big guy. Can you hear me? I'm not going to hurt you." The dog didn't growl. He slowly raised his eyes to her, without hostility. He seemed to weigh every movement, as if unsure whether to defend himself, or simply shut down. Samantha moved forward a little further, placing one hand on the icy chain. Her other hand gently stroked the dog's head, and she felt her fingers brush against old scars. She then noticed a leather collar, worn but still legible. On a tarnished metal plaque, she read, "Max, K9 Unit Number 347, Bluefield Police, retired." His breath caught. And K9 dog, here, alone, abandoned? Tied to a tree like a common object? Max had served. Max had protected. He carried within him the echo of missions, of loyalty, of silent courage. And we left it there, like a memory that we no longer wanted to deal with. A shiver ran through her. But this time, it wasn't from the cold. Samantha manages to untie him. The chain was rusty, stiff, embedded in the bark as if it had been there for weeks. Her fingers trembled with cold and anger. She unscrewed it slowly, carefully, speaking softly to the dog while avoiding any sudden movements. Max didn't flinch. He seemed resigned, but a very slight twitch of his tail indicated perhaps a spark of confidence. She took out of her bag the thick wool military blanket she always carried on her walks, in case she fell or came across a wounded animal. An old habit. She wrapped it around him, covering his emaciated body, trying to convey a little human warmth, a little humanity. He was heavier than he looked, not by his mass, but by everything he carried: abandonment, fear, incomprehension. She lifted him with infinite care, as if lifting a sick child, and walked the 50 meters to her car, breathing heavily, silent tears freezing on her reddened cheeks. In the trunk of her old SUV, she had set up a small corner with a mat, water, and a first aid kit. That morning, she didn't know why she'd taken it. Now she understood. On the way back, Max didn't move. He didn't even moan. He stared outside the window, motionless. As if he were trying to understand what was happening to him. As if he'd seen much worse, and didn't know if he still had the right to hope. At her house, Samantha moved Max into the room she called the infirmary, a small room off the kitchen, which she had converted to treat injured animals. She turned on a space heater, set down a bowl of warm water and another of chicken broth, and then knelt before him. "You're home, Max. No one will ever hurt you again." During 2 whole days, she cared for him like a wounded soldier. Every morning, she cleaned the wounds on his paws with an antiseptic solution, spoke to him gently while she bandaged his damaged pads. She fed him by hand, patiently, gently, piece by piece. She slept only in 2-hour increments, on the old couch in the living room, her ears always listening for the slightest moan. She left the door open, and Max, though exhausted, sat up every time she left the room. He refused to eat unless she was there. He looked into her eyes as if trying to read her intentions. As if he were afraid that as soon as he let his guard down, she too would disappear. But she didn't leave. The second night, she sat on the floor, against the wall. She spoke softly about simple things: the cold, the hot coffee, memories of the military base. Max blinked slowly, as if listening, as if recognizing something in her voice. On the third day, in the morning, as the golden light filtered through the curtains, Max approached slowly, with an almost ceremonial slowness. He laid his head on Samantha's lap. In silence. She didn't move right away. She felt the weight of the gesture. It wasn't just gratitude. It was a surrender. He said to him, without a word, "I am yours. I trust you." She felt her throat tighten, her hands tremble. "It's over, my friend. You'll never be alone again." At this precise moment, she knew this dog was no longer a case to be managed, a patient to be saved. That he was now part of her life. She would never let him go again. He had found a home, and she had found a soul mate. But as she looked at this old canine soldier asleep at her feet, a haunting question began to haunt her. How could a canine dog, a hero, a comrade in arms, end up like this? Where were the people in charge? Where was the memory of what he had accomplished? Who forgot it? It was no longer just an adoption story. It was a quest for justice, but also for truth. A truth buried beneath layers of oblivion, indifference, and administrative negligence. Samantha, who had seen soldiers die for causes that were forgotten the next day, refused to add Max to this long list of silent sacrifices. He would not be a simple, found dog, but a symbol, a living reminder of what loyalty meant, and forgetting. She set to work as one would an investigation. Methodically. Determination. And that veteran intuition she had never truly lost. The next morning, she picked up her phone, called the old police station in Bluefield, and asked to speak to someone who had experience with K-9 units. She was given several names. Numbers. She persisted. Finally, after a series of transfers, a deep, raspy voice answered the other end of the line. Lambert, George. Retired inspector. She took a deep breath. Hello, Mr. Lambert. My name is Samantha Hayes. I found an abandoned K9 dog in the woods. His name is Max. Silence. Max, he murmured as if the name awakened something in him. Max, K9 Unit Number 347, official Bluefield police caller. I remember him. He belonged to Officer Ryan McClure. Quite a duo, those. Ryan was our man for the toughest cases, trafficking, explosives, hostages. And Max, well, Max never failed. What happened after Ryan died? Ryan died of a heart attack at home one evening in June. He was retired, but still volunteering. He had no immediate family. We thought Max had been taken into care. By whom? Lambert hesitated. The municipal kennel. That's the procedure when a handler dies. Retired dogs are normally transferred for adoption, or given to a level 2 shelter. And this kennel still exists? A long sigh. He closed 2 weeks after Ryan's death. Budget cuts. Staff were laid off without notice. Everything was quickly cleared out. No more budget. No more monitoring. No more managers. Samantha felt her throat tighten, her hand tremble slightly. Max hadn't just been abandoned. He had been erased. Written off a board. Victim of a system that treats heroes as consumables once they are no longer useful. And no one said anything? No one looked for him? No. Maybe someone thought he was adopted. Or worse, euthanized. You know, when budgets fall, priorities change. These words froze his blood. Euthanasia. That's what Max was risking. If she hadn't found him, he might already be dead. Tied up, frozen, forgotten. And no one would have known. No articles. No reports. Just another dead dog. A number in a statistic. But Max wasn't a number. He had risked his life. He had obeyed without hesitation. He had felt the fear, the danger, the tension of the crowds, the screams, the gunshots. And he had done it out of duty. Out of a bond with his master. And when he died, the system left him, to die in turn. Samantha hung up. She stood frozen for a few moments, staring out the steamy kitchen window. In the living room, Max was finally sleeping peacefully, breathing slowly. He looked like an old soldier on leave. She took a deep breath, opened her notebook, and wrote down the facts. Names. Dates. Kennel closure. Max's disappearance. Silence from the authorities. It was no longer just his personal story. It was the story of a sick system, of a city that had turned the page too quickly. And she was going there rewrite. That evening, after talking once more with Inspector Lambert, Samantha returned home with a heavy heart, but her mind was boiling. She wasn't just angry, she was determined. She knew that dozens of other dogs like Max were probably in the same situation. And she couldn't just be happy with having saved him his. It was necessary to hit harder. Higher. Further. She entered the living room where Max slept, curled up on a gray wool rug. He was breathing slowly, his muzzle resting between his paws, his eyes half closed. The golden light from the lamp formed a crown around him. A halo of silence. Of peace restored. She looked at him for a long time. And then, gently, she took her phone, knelt down to his height, and took a picture. No filter. No retouching. Just the naked truth. We saw Max, thin but dignified, his eyes tired but intense, as if he were looking straight into the soul of whoever met his gaze through the screen. She opened Facebook, typed a text without deleting it, without correcting it, with slightly trembling hands. This is Max. A former police dog. He served our city for 7 years. He found missing children. He chased criminals. He detected explosives. He risked his life for people he didn't know. After his owner died, Max was sent to a kennel, which closed without warning. And Max was forgotten. I found him tied to a tree, hungry, injured, alone, in the forest. Is this how Bluefield treats his heroes? If you think not, please pass on his story. She pressed publish, without expecting anything. She thought she would reach a few neighbors, perhaps get the town hall to react, but she had no idea that this simple publication would trigger a national shock wave. In the first 6 hours, his post reached 10,000 shares. Comments poured in non-stop, from veterans, dog handlers, police officers, shocked citizens. People cried as they read his message. Others expressed their shame. Still others asked him how they could help. In less than 48 hours, the publication exceeded 40,000 shares. The hashtag #JusticeForMax appeared on Twitter, then on Instagram, then in TikTok stories where people told the stories of their own service dogs. Facebook groups were created, the Silent Angels, support for K9S, the forgotten ones of the service. An internet user launched a collect GoFundMe to cover Max's veterinary expenses. Within 24 hours, $15,000 were collected. A retired military veterinarian even offered to come personally and do a complete checkup on Max, free of charge. But the most unexpected thing happened 3 days later. The local journalist Darren Bloom, known for his social chronicles in the Bluefield Observer, published a poignant article, accompanied by the photo of Samantha and Max. The title: Max, the Forgotten Dog, the Price of Silence. The article was picked up by regional media, then by NBC, CNN, and The Washington Post. Samantha received more than 300 calls in 2 days. Animal rights associations, politicians, celebrities. Faced with growing pressure, the mayor of Bluefield, Martha Jennings, called an emergency press conference. Under the cameras, she read a statement, visibly moved. "We failed in our duty. We left a hero behind. Starting today, every service dog in the city of Bluefield will receive a lifetime veterinary monitoring and a supervised adoption retired. We are going to open a transition center for retired K9 dogs, which will be named after Max." Applause erupted, but Samantha remained silent in front of his screen. For her, it was still not enough. A week later, she was invited to speak before the Kansas Public Safety Commission, in Topeka. She appeared in a dark suit, with Max at her feet, lying calmly. She spoke. Her voice was calm, clear, without anger, but charged with emotion. "In the army, I was taught one thing. You never leave a brother in arms behind. Max is a soldier. He risked his life to protect ours. What he expected in return was nothing much, a home, recognition, dignity. It's not a favor we owe him. It's Athos." An impressive silence reigned in the room. Then, a quiet but sincere applause rose up. Several members of the commission had shining eyes. A few weeks later, a bill was introduced in the state Senate. He was called Max's Law. Objective: require any public institution using animals to service to guarantee their after-service support. Financing specialized foster homes. Create a public register of service dogs retirees, to ensure their monitoring. Offer a special legal status to animals having served, protecting them from abusive adoption or from abandon. The law received bipartisan support. It became a model for other states. And while the debates raged at the political level, Max, he continued to sleep peacefully at Samantha's feet. He did not know that he had become a symbol national. But in his eyes, it didn't matter. Because for him, the world had changed the day Samantha knelt in the snow, extending a gentle hand and a calm voice. And no speech could ever say this better. 3 months later, the ceremony. The long-awaited day finally arrived. The autumn sun bathed the small town of Bluefield off a soft, peaceful, golden light. A light breeze rustled the red and gold leaves that were slowly falling from the large maple trees lining the square in front of the police station. the townspeople had gathered en masse. Families, police officers in impeccable uniforms, veterans with weathered faces, children with bright eyes. All had one goal: to honor Max, the silent hero who had given so much without ever asking for anything. In the center of the square now stood a bronze statue, majestic. It was a German shepherd, standing tall, its head held high, its posture noble and proud. Its gaze was turned towards the horizon, as if to symbolize eternal vigilance. On the base, an engraved plaque bore this sober but powerful inscription: "To Max, and to all who served without ever asking." Max himself was there, almost unrecognizable. His fur had regained its luster, his eyes sparkled with life and gratitude. Around his neck, a golden medal hung proudly, an official tribute to his courage and loyalty. He didn't move. He didn't bark. He watched, calm and dignified, as if he fully understood the significance of this moment. As if he knew this recognition went far beyond himself. The elementary school children, dressed in their colorful uniforms, came forward one by one to place bouquets of flowers at the statue's feet. Their innocent faces reflected admiration and gratitude. Some wiped away tears, not yet fully comprehending, but sensing the grandeur of what they were helping to celebrate. The veterans, for their part, saluted with a slow and respectful gesture, some shaking Samantha's hand, others placing medals on the plaque. A sacred silence fell over the square. A silence that seemed to suspend time, bringing hearts together in a single vibration. On a mild autumn night, 3 years later, the cycle of life came to an end. Max, lying at the foot of Samantha's bed, died peacefully in his sleep. His breathing became slow, then silent. Samantha, with sadness mixed with gratitude, mourned her companion, her brother in arms. But she knew that her mission did not end there. The next day, she buried him at the foot of the old oak tree, where she had found him, where their story had begun. On the tombstone, carefully engraved, these words: Max Hayes, service dog, courage, loyalty, silence. It was a place of remembrance, a sanctuary of memory for all those who, human or animal, had served with bravery. Since that day, every year, the 12 Mars, anniversary of Max's rescue, the city of Bluefield is organizing the Max Dia Day dedicated to honoring all service animals, police dogs, guide dogs, police horses, and other loyal companions. Ceremonies, conferences, photo exhibitions, and awareness-raising activities punctuate this day. Residents, young and old, gather to show their respect and appreciation, and to support the organizations that work for animal welfare in the community. Samantha, with this experience, founded a national organization, the Guardians of the Shadow, dedicated to the protection, monitoring, and rehabilitation of retired service dogs and animals. Every day, she receives letters and testimonials from police officers, soldiers, and families who have adopted an animal, all expressing the same gratitude. Thank you for reminding America that courage doesn't always have 2 legs. Thanks to her, the lives of thousands of animals have changed. Their sacrifice is no longer ignored, their dignity is finally respected. And somewhere, in the living memory of Bluefield, in the alleys, in the parks, in the hearts of those who know this story, the gaze of Max, this forgotten dog that has become a symbol, continues to watch. He became the silent guardian of a better world, where every hero, whether 4-legged or 2-legged, is honored for what he has given. And this story, passed down from generation to generation, reminds everyone that loyalty, courage, and respect are timeless values.